Dahl, attorney and legal analyst. She's host of the legal and political podcast, Mistrial, on the Midas Touch Network. Oh, Dina, so many legal things to talk about right now. But I want to start with the inconsistencies of the Supreme Court. So right now, the Supreme Court is going further in considering whether or not people can individually sue over cases that have to do with the Voting Rights Act. So let me just read this to you. The Supreme Court has scheduled 3 cases raising the question of whether the Voting Rights Act can be enforced by individual voters as opposed to just the Department of Justice. And the conference is tomorrow. Should we just assume that they're going to rule that no one can bring voting rights cases? Like, what are the dangers here?
Oh, so dangerous. It's so dangerous because if individuals and nonprofits cannot sue to enforce the Voting Rights Act, you're left with the Department of Justice. And here, of course, the Department of Justice would never bring a lawsuit to protect, Democratic voters or minority voters. So it's very important. The Supreme Court at their conference, they could decide as soon as we might find out by Monday whether or not they decide to take this case, or they could kick it to another conference. Interestingly, they have discussed at 7 different conferences whether or not to take up Trump's appeal of the E. Jean Carroll case. So I know.
But they're still considering that. Hasn't E. Jean Carroll won at every level possible?
Every level possible. But he asked them to throw out, because he said the Access Hollywood tape shouldn't have come in. And rather than just take up the conference and say, no, this kind of evidence is routinely brought in, they have punted it 7 times. So we might get an answer as to whether or not the Supreme Court takes this, or they might punt this. But it is so crucial. To give you an idea, the past 40 years, out of 182 cases that were brought against the Voting Rights Act, only 15 were brought against the Attorney General. So it's a huge way of just limiting the enforcement of the act on top of the Calais decision. Interestingly, the 8th Circuit ruling years ago said that there is no private right of enforcement. And back in July of 2025, the Supreme Court stayed that decision. So didn't let it go into effect. Gorsuch, Alito, and Thomas wanted it to go into effect. So we're at this period of time where the Supreme Court has been silent. They haven't come. Are they going to take it and resolve the issue one way or the other, or continue to punt it? But it's very important, because it's one thing to have a law, but if nobody's willing to enforce it, you don't really have the law.
This is insane. Okay, so it's clear to me that that John Roberts clearly wants the husk of the Voting Rights Act to still be on the books, so that no one can say that he got rid of it. But it's dead on the inside. Once they do this, as you said, if basically no one can bring lawsuits except the one group that won't do it under the Trump administration, and they can keep a Trump-style administration in office forever, which is what they seem to want to do, and keep Republicans in charge of Congress forever, which is what they seem to want to do, it's game over for the Voting Rights Act.
Absolutely. It's another way of attacking the Voting Rights Act, but getting the same outcome. As you said, the Calais decision made it so almost impossible to get an enforcement. You have to show intentional discrimination. I don't know if you just followed this Alabama shadow docket ruling, but they allowed, it's insane. They just decided in 2023 that the Alabama map, right, was a violation of the Voting Rights Act. Alabama didn't listen. They wanted to keep their map. And so they're asking again. And the Supreme Court said, well, sure, in light of our decision, you can now have the map we had just decided was a racially. And Justice Sotomayor in her dissent points out they showed intentional discrimination. And that was supposedly the one way you can enforce Section 2. So we've just got 2 weeks, and they're already kind of backtracking on even what evidence needs to be shown. Yeah, it's stunning.
Backtracking on themselves.
Exactly.
Let's talk about inconsistency, because so Virginia did a very clear political gerrymander. I mean, Virginia was very open about it because they went to the voters. Only California and Virginia have actually let the people decide if they should gerrymander. California did it and it went through. Virginia did it and 3 million people put that through as well. It won. Then the Virginia Supreme Court said, nope, wasn't filed right. throwing it out, right? 4 people on the Virginia Supreme Court. So now the state of Virginia, the Democrats in Virginia are taking that to the Supreme Court. Can you preview for us the completely disingenuous argument that we should expect from Sam Alito's or from John Roberts onto how that's somehow still not okay, even though it's clearly political gerrymandering?
I mean, they're probably going to punt it and say this was based on the Virginia Constitution. They don't have subject matter jurisdiction. This isn't our purview. But the really interesting issue there is that the Virginia is saying, when they're appealing it to the Supreme Court, that the court got wrong the definition of election day, because they said, oh, elections, this had to have happened according to the timetable of the election under federal law. And so they're trying to get the Supreme Court to take it, saying it's not a misinterpretation of the state constitution, but of the federal law of election day. Now, the Supreme Court has also looked at what constitutes election day in that Watson versus RNC mail-in ballot case they just heard this year. Because in that case, the RNC is trying to argue that mail-in ballots counted after election day aren't considered election day. And so will the Supreme Court be inconsistent in that, and say,
yes,
I
will,
don't mind being inconsistent.
They don't care. They reverse themselves on Alabama. They're like, oh, we were wrong. Remember how we said you could have 2 districts? No, you can't. We need those Republicans to stay in charge because the Epstein files, we may be in them. Let's talk about before I get to the Epstein files, let me get to that in a minute. But I definitely have to ask you, if in the case of Alabama, the state of Alabama simply ignored the Supreme Court, because I think that's what I heard you say, and said, we don't care what you said. We're going to do what map we want to do. And then they had to be ordered by a special master to do the legal maps. Why shouldn't Virginia just say, okay, we too ignore. And now we're going to do what Texas did. We're not going to vote again. We're not taking this to the people. We, the legislature, are going to draw the map we want, just like Texas did, like Alabama did, like Louisiana did. Why shouldn't they just do the same thing like Tennessee did?
I mean, and I think that's a political argument. Why not? I mean, they could argue maybe, the Purcell doctrine, which is really out the window, that the court shouldn't interfere so close to an election. Why not? Yeah, totally gone. Completely. But why not use that, right? They could argue the voters voted on it. We're too close to elections. We need to get the ballots out to oversee people. They could have decided this before the voters voted. At this point, maybe we'll take that for the next election map. That would be the political argument.
It would be what I would do if any Virginia Democrats care what I have to say. I think you should just do it, because the reality is the Louisiana legislature and governor, they did it in the middle of an election. 40,000 people had already voted, and the governor said, nope, so too bad for them. Those votes are now invalidated. If they can do it, Virginia should just go ahead and do it. This is my opinion. I don't want to tie that to you, but I think they should just do the math.
I agree. And I think they have the people behind them because the people voted for that. So
correct.
I agree.
So let's talk about Jeffrey Epstein. So this note came out, and I had meant to talk with you about this last week. We had so much breaking news on, and we didn't get a chance to do it. So I'm so glad that you were able to come back and talk about this. This Epstein suicide note struck me, alleged suicide note struck me as quite suspicious. Is it unusual that all of these years later, after we've been talking about Jeffrey Epstein since he died in very strange circumstances in August of 2019, suddenly out of nowhere, in the year of our Lord 2026, the roommate that allegedly tried to strangle him in the past, it suddenly says, oh yeah, by the way, I had this note in like a book that was secretly somewhere. Like, what is happening? This is weird.
It is so weird. It's so weird because it was evidently in the government's possession, in the court's possession, but nobody knew about it. They didn't seek it. I mean, just even the investigation into his death should have uncovered this note.
They didn't investigate his death, They didn't want to do that.
Supposedly they investigated. No, it's shocking. And here's the thing: is we know that his first suicide attempt. Afterwards, he said that it was his cellmate that hurt him, and then it's the cellmate who found this note allegedly that said that he was trying to hurt himself. So that's why he supposedly held on to it and gave it to his lawyer. But talk about, a whole bunch of reasons. I could think somebody would want to come up with a note like that if they were trying to defend themselves against the claim that they were actually hurting their cellmate. And of course, the fact that he was even in a cell with somebody who had been convicted 4 times of murder. I mean, you and I have covered a ton of high profile cases. They aren't usually just thrown in a cell with somebody, you know, with that kind of violent criminal conviction, especially since he was there for pedophile charges. Because pedophile charges are known to be a target in prison. And then he has his fame. So the fact that he wasn't in solitary confinement or in a much more protected situation in and of itself is unusual.
It's so weird. But by the way, the Murdoch case, I wonder who his roommates were. Because apparently he gets a new trial, and I guess killing your wife and your and family, I guess he's all right now. Yes, were you surprised by that, by the way, that reversal?
You know, when I first heard about what the clerk evidently did, I wasn't surprised that they reversed it, because the fact, if she did do that, and it sounds like she did, she told the jurors to not be fooled by him and to look at his body language. The prosecutor used those same exact words to the jury. They said, do not be fooled by him. And a juror afterwards, speaking out, said, I didn't believe his emotion. You know, at the end of the day, people really don't like what happened because, you know, it seems like another rich white guy is getting off the hook. But our defense system has to work for everybody, and nobody should be trying to interfere with the jury system. She evidently wrote a book about it. So yeah, that should not happen. And if it happens to benefit him, that's maybe too bad. But I do think in terms of our overall justice system, it was the right decision.
Yeah. Let's talk very quickly before I let you go, because there seem to be emoluments clause problems in this administration. There's the Trump phone. There's Trump putting his name on the money, apparently, and face on the money, putting his image on our passports, putting his name on the Kennedy Center, putting his name on the Institute of Peace. None of this with Congress authorizing it, and selling products, right? The emoluments clause is supposed to prevent a president from profiting while he's president. Donald Trump has a phone he's selling. He's got watches, gold watches. He's selling all sorts of product. And now it appears that his regime members are getting in on the game. This is Kash Patel's apparently custom bourbon. The FBI director is giving out custom bourbon. Between that and the transportation secretary having a reality show paid for by people companies regulated by him, what is happening, Dina?
You know, the Kash Patel and Duffys of the world should be a little bit careful, because Trump is all about the grift himself. But the American people don't like somebody else's grift. He gets rid of them, AKA Kristi Noem, because I truly believe he authorized that entire grift. So, you know, they do it at their peril. He's willing to steal from us. He's okay with them doing it as long as he doesn't get backlash for it. It's stunning. Do you remember you and I were out in front of the People's State of the Union, and we saw that huge banner, and that was my first time seeing it too. And it's one thing being reported, it's another when you really look up at this. And, you know, we do idolize presidents, but it is once they are no longer living that happens, because we are not supposed to be a monarchy. We're not supposed to have that kind of reverence to a living president. Trump so badly just once. You know, he reminds me of somebody who he cannot earn loyalty and love. So instead, he manufactures it. And to your point, as of June 2026, his signature is going to be on the $100 bill along with Scott Bessent, which is just stunning. He's trying to, the amount he's trying to act as if this country is his, instead of he is just, unfortunately, as too many of us allowed him to borrow the power. And yeah, we're seeing what happens when you have somebody completely unchecked, because Republicans in Congress are not checking him. If they were doing their job, he could be reined in, but they're more than happy to let him do it.
Yeah, he's destroyed the White House. He's turned the former beautiful Jackie Kennedy Garden into what looks like a patio at a not the best Marriott. He's painted the reflecting pool blue so that it looks like a cheap swimming pool at a cheesy resort. That's the beautiful reflecting pool is now just looking like a cheesy. It's horrifying the way he's destroyed Washington, D.C., which is such a beautiful city.
horrible. And that reflecting pool, I mean, they did a no bid contract. You know, not only is he destroying the lawsuit, there's a lawsuit trying to stop it, said it was meant to be gray because it was supposed to be deep and reflective. And of course, I just feel like it's almost like a perfect example of Trump to make it superficial and bright blue.
He thinks it's a lap pool. He's an idiot. It's like, dude has dementia. It's not a lap pool, dude. No one jumps in and swims in it. It's not supposed to be swimming pool blue.
Exactly. And then here we are, supposed to be $1 million, and now it's up to 3 million. And the contractor, somebody who worked at the Trump golf properties. So, you know, in everything, he steals from us in every aspect.
Yeah, it's really horrible. Dina Doll, we appreciate you. You are a doll. We love having you. Come back anytime, my friend. Thank you very much.
It is a joy speaking with you.
You see what we did there? You see what we did there?
We did it.
Thank you, my friend. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.